In this video, we're going to talk about exponential function. Exponential function with base b has the form of f of x equals ab to the x, where x is any real number and x is a variable. Notice the exponent here is variable, and a and b are real number constants such that a cannot equal to 0 and b has to be positive and b cannot equal to 1. So here are some examples of exponential functions such as f of x equals 4 to the x. Here a is 1, b is 4, and we have x. Another example would be f of x is quantity 1 over 3 to the x. A is 1, b is 1 over 3, and it's positive and not equal to 1. And we have exponent that is a variable x. Also, f of x equals 7 to the negative x is an exponential function. If you think about it, right, this is the same thing as 7 to the negative 1 to the x. When there's an exponent next to each other, you can multiply them. So you get negative x. And what is 7 to the negative 1? You get 1 over 7. 7 to the negative 1 is the same thing as 1 over 7 to the x. So what is your a again? A is 1, b is 1 over 7, which is positive, and not equal to 1. And you have a variable, x, as an exponent. So all these three are examples of exponential functions. Now, what are some examples that are not exponential functions? Well, like f of x equals 2x to the negative 3. Well, first of all, the base is not a real number. It's a variable. So this is not exponential. Not only that, the exponent is not variable. So this is not an exponential function. And the other one is when you have f of x equals 5 to the pi. The base is real, positive real, and not equal to 1. However, look at the exponent. It's not variable, it's pi. Therefore, this is not an exponential function. What about f of x equals 1 to the x? Well, the base, we have a problem because base cannot equal to 1. But here we have a base as 1. So therefore, this is not an exponential function. We have exponential function f of x equals 3 to the x. So how would this function look like when you graph? The basic way of graphing this is creating an xy table. Use x values like -4, -2, -1, and so forth. And then come up with the y values. And you plot these points and connect them and then see how the graph looks like. That's a basic way of graphing exponential function. But however, let's use Desmos or graphing calculator and see how it looks like. So we have graph of y equals 3 to the x. This is an exponential function. And notice as x goes to infinity, x gets bigger and bigger, the y value goes to infinity. And as x goes to negative infinity, the y value approaches 0. If you zoom in, this graph will never touch 0, but it looks like it's touching 0 because it's getting very, very close to 0. You see what I mean? This will never touch the 0. So don't be deceived, but it gets very close to 0. So the domain of 3 to the x is negative infinity to infinity. That would be the domain. What about the range? This is the domain. The range goes from 0 to infinity. What about the y-intercept? Y-intercept is going to be 0, 1. That's the y-intercept. And we don't have x-intercept. Now let's see how g of x equals 2 to the negative x look like. Well, again, we could kind of rewrite this as, this is like 2 to the negative 1 to the x, which is the same thing as quantity 1 over 2 to the x. And again, the basic way of graphing this is make a table, plug in like values such as -6, -4, all the way up to 6, and then get the y values and plot these points and connect the dots. That's a basic way of graphing. And we'll look at decimals to see how this graph looks like. So we have a graph of 2 to the negative x. Unlike the other one, 3 to the x, this function is decreasing. It's decreasing when you look at it from left to right. And the y-intercept is 0, 1. And again, it never touches 0 as x goes to infinity. And as x goes to negative infinity, the y value goes to infinity. So the domain of this function is, again, negative infinity to infinity. It covers all the x values, meaning that for any x value, you have a y value. What about the range? The y value only exists whenever it's greater than 0 to infinity. And the y-intercept is 0, 1. And again, this function is decreasing all the time from left to right. You have graph of y equals 4 to the x. So it's going to look something like this. It's an exponential function. It's going to look something like that, where this is going to be 0, 1. Just plug in 0. 4 to 0 is 1, so the y-intercept will be 0, 1. Now, what if they want you to sketch y equals 4 to the x minus 2? Well, this graph will look like 4 to the x. Now, you're going to have a vertical shift. Everything's going to move down 2 compared to this. So, the y-intercept will go down 2. And the x-axis will go down 2 as well. So the graph will look like this. Everything is moving down 2. So this will be 4 to the x minus 2. Now what if you want to graph negative 4 of x? Well, negative 4 of x is opposite of 4 of x. That means the y value will be opposite. So it's going to be the graph that has a reflection with respect to the x-axis. So for example, 0, 1 will end up being at 0, -1. Think about it. When you plug in a 0, 4 to the 0 is 1, but you have negative, so it will be -1. So it's going to be reflected with respect to the x-axis. So it's going to look like this. That's the graph of -4 to the x. Now, what if you want to graph y equals -4x plus 2? In order to do that, you first need to sketch y equals 4 to the x plus 2. And then this is the opposite of this. So this graph will have a reflection with respect to this graph. So how does this graph look like? Well, it will look like 4 to the x, but now this exponent is x plus 2. So that means there is going to be a horizontal shift to the left. So you got the y-intercept moves to the left, 2 to the left, and then it will look like this. Okay, this will be 4x plus 2. 4 to the power of x plus 2. And this graph right here will have a reflection with respect to this graph. So this graph right here will be negative 4x plus 2. So let's kind of talk about how to sketch this graph. In order to sketch this graph, you first need to start with y equals 4 to the x. And then what happens? You are going to have a horizontal shift to the right now because this is x minus 3. And then what you need to do, you need to have a vertical shift. Everything's going to move up twice. So that's how you sketch it. You might want to try it on your own and check with the decimals.